which we believe to be unique and absolute, is only one in a cluster of consecutive worlds, arranged like the layers of an onion. Even though we have been energetically conditioned to perceive solely our world, we still have the capability of entering into those other realms, which are as real, unique, absolute, and engulfing as our own world is. For us to perceive those other realms, not only do we have to covet them, but we need to have sufficient energy to seize them. Their existence is constant and independent of our awareness, but their inaccessibility is entirely a consequence of our energetic conditioning. In other words, simply and solely because of that conditioning, we are compelled to assume that the world of daily life is the one and only possible world. That sorcerers of ancient times developed a set of practices designed to recondition our energetic capabilities to perceive. They called this set of practices the art of dreaming. Dreaming is the sorcerer's practical way of putting ordinary dreams to use. Dreaming can only be experienced. Dreaming is not just having dreams. Neither is it daydreaming, or wishing, or imagining. Through dreaming, we can perceive other worlds, which we can certainly describe, but we can't describe what makes us perceive them. Yet we can feel how dreaming opens up those other realms. Dreaming seems to be a sensation, a process in our bodies, an awareness in our minds. The sorcery premises pertinent to dreaming were naturally envisioned and developed by sorcerers of antiquity. In order to appreciate the position of dreamers in dreaming, one has to understand the struggle of modern-day sorcerers to steer sorcery away from concreteness toward the abstract. The obsessive fixation of the mind on practices and techniques, the unwarranted influence over people, all of these were in the realm of the sorcerers of the past. And what do you call the abstract? The search for freedom. Freedom to perceive without obsessions all that's humanly possible. I say that present-day sorcerers seek the abstract because they seek freedom. They have no interest in concrete gains. There are no social functions for them as there were for the sorcerers of the past. So you'll never catch them being the official seers or the sorcerers in residence. Their most important attainment was to perceive the energetic essence of things. This insight was of such importance that it was turned into the basic premise of sorcery. Nowadays, after lifelong discipline and training, sorcerers do acquire the capacity to perceive the essence of things, a capacity they call seeing. What would it mean to me to perceive the energetic essence of things? It would mean that you perceive energy directly, he replied. By separating the social part of perception, you'll perceive the essence of everything. Whatever we're perceiving is energy, but since we can't directly perceive energy, we process our perception to fit a mold. This mold is the social part of perception, which you have to separate. Why do I have to separate it? Because it deliberately reduces the scope of what can be perceived, and makes us believe that the mold into which we fit our perception is all that exists. I am convinced that for man to survive now, his perception must change at its social base. What is this social base of perception? The physical certainty that the world is made of concrete objects. I call this a social base because a serious and fierce effort is put out by everybody to guide us to perceive the world the way we do. How then should we perceive the world? Everything is energy. The whole universe is energy. The social base of our perception should be the physical certainty that energy is all there is. A mighty effort should be made to guide us to perceive energy as energy. Then we would have both alternatives at our fingertips. Our entrapment in processing our perception to fit a social mold loses its power when we realize we have accepted this mold as an inheritance from our ancestors without bothering to examine it. To perceive a world of hard objects that had either a positive or a negative value must have been utterly necessary for our ancestors' survival. After ages of perceiving in such a manner, we are now forced to believe that the world is made up of objects. I can't conceive the world in any other way, Don Juan, I complained. It's unquestionably a world of objects. To prove it, all we have to do is bump into them. Of course it's a world of objects. We're not arguing that. What are you saying, then? I'm saying that this is first a world of energy. Then it's a world of objects. If we don't start with the premise that it is a world of energy, we'll never be able to perceive energy directly. We'll always be stopped by the physical certainty of what you've just pointed out, the hardness of objects. Our way of perceiving is a predator's way, a very efficient manner of appraising and classifying food and danger. But this is not the only way we are able to perceive. There is another mode, the one I am familiarizing you with, the act of perceiving the essence of everything, energy itself, directly. To perceive the essence of everything will make us understand, classify, and describe the world in entirely new, more exciting, more sophisticated terms. The most significant act of sorcery is to see the essence of the universe. The sorcerers of antiquity, the first ones to see the essence of the universe, described it in the best manner. They said that the essence of the universe resembles incandescent threads stretched into infinity in every conceivable direction. Luminous filaments that are conscious of themselves in ways impossible for the human mind to comprehend. From seeing the essence of the universe, the sorcerers of antiquity went on to see the energy essence of human beings. They depicted human beings as bright shapes that resembled giant eggs, and called them luminous eggs. When sorcerers see a human being, they see a giant luminous shape that floats, making, as it moves, a deep furrow in the energy of the earth, just as if the luminous shape had a taproot that was dragging. Our energy shape keeps on changing through time. He said that every seer he knew himself included, saw that human beings are shaped more like balls, or even tombstones, than eggs. But once in a while, and for no reason known to them, sorcerers see a person whose energy is shaped like an egg. People who are egg-like in shape today are more akin to people of ancient times. In the course of his teachings, Don Juan repeatedly discussed and explained what he considered the decisive finding of the sorcerers of antiquity. He called it the crucial feature of human beings as luminous balls, a round spot of intense brilliance, the size of a tennis ball, permanently lodged inside the luminous ball, flush with its surface, about 2 feet back from the crest of a person's right shoulder blade. Since I had trouble visualizing this the first time Don Juan described it to me, he explained that the luminous ball is much larger than the human body, that the spot of intense brilliance is part of this ball of energy, and that it's located on a place at the height of the shoulder blades, an arm's length from a person's back. He said that the old sorcerers named it the assemblage point, after seeing what it does. "What does the assemblage point do?" I asked. "It makes us perceive," he replied. The old sorcerers saw that in human beings perception is assembled there, on that point. Seeing that all living beings have such a point of brilliance, the old sorcerers surmised that perception in general must take place on that spot, in whatever pertinent manner. What did the old sorcerers see that made them conclude that perception takes place on the assemblage point? I asked. He answered that first, they saw that out of the millions of the universe's luminous energy filaments passing through the entire luminous ball, only a small number passed directly through the assemblage point, as should be expected since it's small in comparison with the whole. Next, they saw that a spherical extra glow, slightly bigger than the assemblage point, always surrounds it, greatly intensifying the luminosity of the filaments passing directly through that glow. Finally, they saw 2 things. One, that the assemblage points of human beings can dislodge themselves from the spot where they are usually located. And 2, that when the assemblage point is on its habitual position, perception and awareness seem to be normal, judging by the normal behavior of the subjects being observed. But when their assemblage points and surrounding glowing spheres are on a different position than the habitual one, their unusual behavior seems to be the proof that their awareness is different, that they are perceiving in an unfamiliar manner. The conclusion the old sorcerers drew from all this was that the greater the displacement of the assemblage point from its customary position, the more unusual the consequent behavior and, evidently, the consequent awareness and perception. Everything one sees is so unique that there is no way to talk about it except by comparing it to something known to us. He said that the most adequate example of this difficulty was the way sorcerers talk about the assemblage point and the glow that surrounds it. They describe them as brightness. Yet it cannot be brightness because seers see them without their eyes. They have to fill out the difference, however, and say that the assemblage point is a spot of light, and that around it there is a halo, a glow. Don Juan pointed out that we are so visual, so ruled by our predator's perception, that everything we see must be rendered in terms of what the predator's eye normally sees. After seeing what the assemblage point and its surrounding glow seemed to be doing, Don Juan said that the old sorcerers advanced an explanation. They proposed that in human beings the assemblage point, by focusing its glowing sphere on the universe's filaments of energy that pass directly through it, automatically and without premeditation assembles those filaments into a steady perception of the world. Seeing that millions of conscious energy filaments pass through the assemblage point, the old sorcerers postulated that in passing through it, they come together, amassed by the glow that surrounds it. After seeing that the glow is extremely dim in people who have been rendered unconscious or are about to die, and that it's totally absent from corpses, they were convinced that this glow is awareness. There is no trace of an assemblage point on a dead being because the assemblage point and its surrounding glow are the mark of life and consciousness. The inescapable conclusion of the sorcerers of antiquity was that awareness and perception go together and are tied to the assemblage point and the glow that surrounds it. It certainly would be infinitely safer for sorcerers to remain solely at the level of describing what they see, but that the temptation to conclude and explain, even if only to oneself, is far too great to resist. The effect of the assemblage point's displacement was another energy configuration the sorcerers of antiquity were able to see and study. When the assemblage point is displaced to another position, a new conglomerate of millions of luminous energy filaments come together on that point. The sorcerers of antiquity saw this and concluded that since the glow of awareness is always present wherever the assemblage point is, perception is automatically assembled there. Because of the different position of the assemblage point, the resulting world, however, cannot be our world of daily affairs. The old sorcerers were capable of distinguishing two types of assemblage point displacement. One was a displacement to any position on the surface, or in the interior of the luminous ball. This displacement they called a shift of the assemblage point. The other was a displacement to a position outside the luminous ball. They called this displacement a movement of the assemblage point. They found out that the difference between a shift and a movement was the nature of the perception each allows. Since the shifts of the assemblage point are displacements within the luminous ball, the worlds engendered by them, no matter how bizarre or wondrous or unbelievable they might be, are still worlds within the human domain. The human domain is the energy filaments that pass through the entire luminous ball. By contrast, movements of the assemblage point, since they are displacements to positions outside the luminous ball, engage filaments of energy that are beyond the human realm. Perceiving such filaments engenders worlds that are beyond comprehension, inconceivable worlds, with no trace of human antecedents in them. See the assemblage point. It isn't that difficult to see. The difficulty is in breaking the retaining wall we all have in our minds that holds us in place. To break it, all we need is energy. Once we have energy, seeing happens to us by itself. The trick is in abandoning our fort of self-complacency and false security. It is just a matter of having energy. Believe me, the hard part is convincing yourself that it can be done. For this, you need to trust the Nahual. The marvel of sorcery is that every sorcerer has to prove everything with his own experience. I am telling you about the principles of sorcery, not with the hope that you will memorize them, but with the hope that you will practice them.